Congratulations.
It was very shocking and very, very exciting.
You know, it's really funny. I knew about this and I can't tell you from who or how for like more than a week before you sent it to me. And it was so hard not to tell you.
I've actually got an email from like 3 managers saying the same thing, that they knew about it, but they couldn't tell me. And it was like torture for them.
Exactly. So we are congratulating Stacey for the new people here. She ranked as the top 50 team in all of New York City.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, really the funniest part though is like when you look at like the numbers of transactions, like the guy next to me in my office who also made it, like he did 6 transactions to make the same amount and I have 70. Like, I'm like, it just sounds just a little easier, but you know, not very grateful for our business, but definitely a different business.
Here's where we're going to start. We're going to start a discussion today on hiring. I don't know how I have an echo. That's weird.
That's me and you. It's me and you. I'm turning mine off. It's me.
There we go. So one of the things that we want to talk about is hiring. And the concept of hiring is very challenging, I believe, for real estate agents for a few reasons. Is the number one reason is we hire somebody when everything is already in chaos. Right? I can tell by the look on everyone's face. They're like, "Shit, I'm guilty of this." Right. So let's start with the mindset of this. Right. So when our cup is full, we're like, "Oh my God, I need somebody." Right. I need to get some water out of this bottle. And when the bottle is empty, they're like, "Oh, I don't need anyone. There's nothing in my bottle." And this is the conundrum that people go through in
Chirag, can't hear you now. Cannot hear you. Still can't hear you.
Rod, get rid of those earphones, maybe.
Maybe it's the headset, yeah.
Forgot to charge them.
Now? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Sorry.
There
about
you
that.
go.
I have 2 sets of AirPods. None of them want to work, and the computer's playing tricks on me. So, look, does this sound familiar though in the thought process of hiring somebody? Right? I'm really busy. I feel I need somebody, but at that same time, I don't have time to train somebody. And where do I find them? When my cup is empty and I have the capacity to hire somebody, train somebody, and bring them on, my mind brings me, well, why am I going to pay? It's going to work.
I'm the same way. And then someone needs to mute.
Fran, there we go. Don't worry. But this is the nature how we think, correct? So the first thing I want you to write down for your notes is real estate is an annual business. It's an annual business. Meaning when you look at your numbers, it's how much money you made in the year. The idea of looking at what you do transactionally by a day, a week, a month on the way that you measure your expenses and everything is literally an anxiety attack waiting to happen. And I know some people on this call are anxious no matter what, but that'll make you even more anxious. Now, the second part of this is the culture of that environment. When you're approaching your work that way and how you're paying somebody, what do you think the experience of your employee will be? It will be freaking terrible because they don't know if they have a job. They don't know if they don't have a job. The way that you approach it is not training a long-term person, because the funny thing is the way our mindset works is we'll go to our limiting beliefs first. And if we're acting in our limiting beliefs, we're never going to approach someone in a long-term relationship based because we're trying to justify in our mind the expense every day. Who here feels that way and understands that? We all do. So how do we work through this, right? Now, number one, whatever your salary is, They only get that much money if they successfully complete 12 months of work for you. 12 months. So the average employee, assuming they only work 40 hours a week, and in real estate, no employee really works 40 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, that is 2,000 hours. Do you really want to believe the idea that if someone supported you for 2,000 hours in your business, that you wouldn't make the money back and a return on them? Makes sense, right? But the question I want to ask, and I want to open this up to discussion, is all of you in this group do over $1 million in GCI. That's one of the reasons you guys are here, because we all have businesses like that. And if you're earning that much money, what is the hesitancy and where do you get stuck in investing in yourself? Because look, one of the big things before we hear from where we're all stuck and then before we provide a solution is the thought process of capacity. When you look at real estate companies and you look at, we'll use Compass for an example, whether it's an AEM, a marketing advisor, a sales manager, they have capacity issues, right? And they do it based on headcount. Like how many agents does it take where a person's going to be at max capacity to do something else, right? So they need another person. Well, in your business, what is your capacity, right? And do you hire somebody when you're at max capacity or when you get to 60%, right? So part of this is learning today how to forecast out for employees, right? When your business gets to a certain milestone, you should project out like, okay, now I need to start hiring somebody, right? Because the time is you need to recruit somebody, you need to interview somebody, you're going to have to go through compensation, you're going to have to negotiate their offer, you're going to have to hire them, you're going to have to onboard them, you're going to have to train them, they're going to have to shadow you, and then they're going to be ready to work. And does that sound like a 30-day process? No, it's more at least like a 90 to 120-day process. So that's how we want to run our businesses like businesses and project out. Does that make sense? So where does everyone get stuck in investing in themselves? When they know at the end of the year, the money's there, and if the person does a bad job, they could fire them. Who wants to share? Megan. Oh, you're a good one for this.
Well, yeah, because as you know, I get particularly stuck on this issue. Weirdly enough, since we've started coaching with you, we've now hired 3 people. So we went from 2 to 5. So we're in the like painful training phase, but and we're not doing it quite right. We just had a meeting where we're like, okay, we need to slow down and do some actual training. But where we get stuck sometimes, and Jillian and I were just talking, is, well, we don't need these people in July and August. We don't want to deal with these people in July and August. We work our tails off for like 8 months and then we want to rest and we don't want to have to manage people. But what I'm slowly realizing, and Jillian maybe more slowly, is, well, that's when we do building stuff. We do marketing stuff. We do website stuff. We do other stuff, but like our brains just aren't there right now because we're so busy right now. So we feel like we have downtime with employees because we're not managing our own schedules well.
I like literally you stole, like if someone could have stole the thought out of my head, that's it. The bane of growth, the enemy of growth and scale in your business is, I don't need these people during this time. If that right there is a limiting belief. I'm going to ask David this before another person goes, since David is the master of all things psychology. Where do you think these beliefs come from, and why do you think people get stuck like this? People always get stuck at this point. Exactly.
Well, it's important to know that our brains are wired to recognize danger. And it's a fundamental, seems to be a protection mechanism that goes way back in evolution. And so it's easy for us to recognize when something could go wrong. And it's very easy when you walk on a dark street, all alone, you might say, oh my gosh, I better be careful if somebody's around in the middle of the night. But on a beautiful day, you're not likely to say, wow, this is such a nice, safe, comfortable street, right? You're probably just enjoying the day. You don't think about it the same way. So we have to recognize that fundamentally we have a brain that's wired to recognize risk or recognize danger of some kind. Now, that may have been gone way back to the old days when it was physical danger, but now the danger is in the form of profitability or reputation or anything that's kind of attached to us as a person that we value. And so that's one thing. Second thing is, when we think about hiring people, we're thinking about we have a wish or a desire for what can go right, but having hired people in the past or running a business, we have experience that tells us it's not easy, that you have to work your tail off. And even if you do, you still have to overcome 900 problems to achieve what it is you want to achieve. And so there's this like unwritten expectation in our mind that there's 100 different ways this could go wrong rather than go right. And so it's very easy for us to fall into our limiting beliefs at any time about hiring people, about running the business, about coaching, about any aspect of the business. It's very easy for our mind to go there. And so if we're going to lead the business effectively, we have to recognize when limiting beliefs are popping up for us and question them. Are they really reasonable? Because very often they're not. Or is there another way to look at it that's a little bit more empowering? What I always say is a leader adopts an empowering interpretation regardless of circumstance. And what I mean by that is when you hire somebody or when you take any action as a leader, chances are there's some limiting beliefs or negative beliefs you have about it, as well as some positive beliefs, right? You're hiring the person because you have a positive belief that this person can help the business. You also have a limiting belief that this person could blow up and it could waste a lot of time and you have to hire somebody afterwards. But as a leader, from a leadership point of view, you need to choose to act from here. Because if you're acting out of your limiting beliefs, then you're giving up your power and agency as a leader. Right? Any possibility that could come from you hiring a person, assuming it's the right person, is not going to exist because you're caught up in your limiting beliefs. That doesn't mean that you pull the trigger on every single possible thing for the business, but it does require a higher level of awareness of where your dialogue in your head is either preventing your business from succeeding or giving the business the opportunity to succeed.
Makes complete sense when you say it that way. Where else do people get stuck, right? That's one. I want to hear one more of like actually investing in people, because people are an investment.
I get stuck more about interpersonally, right? Like there's so many ups and downs with the team, right? Of like everyone's working well together, everyone's driving, everyone's not. And like we've made so many changes to ensure that everyone is happy and working together and happy with the team. To like throw a new personality in, it's just extremely overwhelming to me. And I also don't want to deal with what comes from that, you know? So to me, that's where I get stuck. It's like, I don't want to mess with what's working right now.
Perfect limiting belief, right? It's just what we're talking about. You perceive risk to the amity of the team, right? To the teamwork, right? You say, uh-oh, this is going to be a wrench. It's going to screw it all up. Perfect example of what we're talking about. Thanks, Stacy. Looks like Margot has a hand up.
Yep. Margot's a rule follower. I love it how some people like will just put their hand up. Go ahead, Margot.
I am. I can't help myself. Being in real estate for 17 years, I've always gotten very overwhelmed by the diverse ways that people structure a team. I know that, Kevin and I have been talking back and forth, and he's only been, with us for a year now about this other person we're going to hire. But it's like, what is the best role to hire? And back in Austin, I talked to a bunch of different agents out there asking people, like picking their brains, and I got completely overwhelmed because everyone's so different in the way they operate a team. So it's like, what is the best fit for your team, for our team, and how to structure those roles?
Josh, you look like you have something you want to say. You have a lot to say about this. You coming in hot.
I'm coming in hot, man. I've made every hiring mistake in the book. And so I've learned a few lessons along the way. But I would say, like, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. Like, there's so many different models out there that it's confusing. And one of the things we've learned along the way is, which sounds like you're doing, is starting with the role that you need to write out that works for your team, right? Like a lot of people do these impulsive hiring. This person looks good and they're accessible and they're looking for a job and they've got some real estate experience or whatever. But like as a place, like obviously you have to think about where you want to be a year, 2 years from now, but like writing out like what are the things that you need done on your team and like creating the job description around that, and then seeking to hiring the right person, I think is the absolute best way to start, because every single team has their own nuances, right? Like you can't, like, even if they're a similar model, they still have their own nuances. So I think it very much depends on like what are your needs, and we'll help you guys.
So here's a couple things that I want people to think about, right? And Tracy Parson and I spent a day together, and I joke around. I left Tracy's house. I went home and I felt poor. It's just such a nice, beautiful view, and it's so tranquil, and there's like a fire going. And we spent a lot of time talking about like, what do these future roles really look like? What does this person do? And I want everyone to go through this exercise. And I know one person I'm going to say this is going to send me a novel that I'll have to read is Matt Breitenbach, right? So like, if you want to find someone that really goes like in the weeds in this stuff and will provide more than enough information, you should talk to Matt. Like, he's very good at doing this. And for a guy that's a sales guy, he's a really good operational strategic thinker. And you want to look at your org chart, right? Like, where are you today? Where do you want to go? And start really figuring out what you want your business to look like in the future. Real estate as a business is way too transactional by nature, right? And Josh, we've talked about this too. Like, it's not building for your present, it's building for your future. Like, how's your business going to evolve, right? What does that next key hire do for you that you're not able to do for today, right? Because look, the essence is like, the game of real estate should be this. How do I increase my top line revenue by adding in leverage? And how do I take the amount of hours I work and bring them down? Right. I know for Stacy, I would encourage you guys to reach out to her about this whole salary to agent. She wasn't sure about her nephew, and now she's like, this is great. Right. And if you look at Stacy in the last month, she's been to San Diego, Barcelona, concerts. Like, looking at her Instagram, for me, I'm like an old man. It's like exhausting. Right. But she's able to do this stuff and her business doesn't fall apart. Right. So I want you to take every person, and here's an exercise for all of us to do. I want you to take every person on your team and write down, what is their purpose? Like, why are they there? Why is this person part of your life? Why do they get to call you? Why do they have your cell phone number? Why do they ask questions? Why do they occupy your space and air? I'm being serious, right? So think about this. The first thing is what is their purpose? The second part is what is their role? Like, what are they supposed to do there on your team every day? The third one is, how do you measure their success? Production minimums, certain tasks get accomplished, right? What is their purpose? What's really their role? Like, what do you want this person to do all the time? And then how do you measure their success? Now, once you write this out, this is always the interesting part. You sit down and you can ask these people. I'd say, hey, Josh Muncy, what do you feel your purpose on the team is? I don't know. What do you supposed to, like, in your mind, what do you think you're supposed to do? And like, really what your job is here every day? Well, I'm not really sure. How do you know what you're doing is successful? I ask myself that every day. And unless those things are paired, you have an unaligned team. And then the next part of it is do they even know what the other people do? Right? So remember those books that we made? If you don't have one, send me an email. I'll mail you one, right? For the San Diego one, the profiles, right? If you look at this book will tell you who Scott is, some information about him, and some basic questions. I encourage all of you to make this for your team. Would it be helpful if I somehow found like the InDesign blank template and just took everyone's pictures out and just left the framework in and sent it to all of us? That someone could give it to a designer? Yes, no? Some, no? Okay. If you want it, we'll give it to you. But the point is how do your team members know what the other people do?
Yeah,
So
I'm going to add to
talking about
Chirag.
employees, not agents. You're saying team members.
They're all part of the same team, right? If you're an agent, am I a buyer's agent? Am I a seller's agent? Am I a listing supporting agent? Am I there to find my own business? Am I there to find my own business and support your business? What are your expectations of me? What are my goals? How does somebody else know my goals? How does someone know what I'm good at and what I need help with? Profiles. Do you know how many of you said this book was really helpful in getting to know the other people there? And if not, you would have never known that information. Right? Part of hiring is creating a culture of transparency and growth. If you don't know what your job is, odds are you can't really do it well.
I'll make an observation. I'll make an observation based on all the teams I've worked with in the last 2 years. You know, I've worked with teams all over the world in every kind of business: real estate, banking, pharmaceuticals, car manufacturing, technology, small teams, large teams, medium teams. There's one challenge that the real estate business, as practiced by Compass agents, have, and that is it's highly like one-on-one. Everybody has a relationship with a team leader and not so much with others. And from my point of view, that's missing a lot of the possibility that is there inherent in the talent and experience of the people that are on the team in the first place. And so when you're thinking about who you want to have in your business, you have to ask yourself, okay, so where are we going? As Chirag was saying, like, you know, what's our goal here? What's our target? And once we're clear about what the vision is for the future, then how do we organize ourselves in a way to achieve that as effectively and efficiently as possible? And you have to project out a little bit, obviously, because you don't want to be doing it when you're scrambling around, when you're so busy. It's the busy time of the year. You don't want to be going through all that stuff. But if you don't know in your own mind what everybody's role is and what is the piece that they're contributing to the whole, nobody else is going to understand it either, and they're not going to be able to deliver it. Ultimately, you want everybody on the team to know what everybody's role is. Even if they don't have daily interaction with each other, it's still, they have some kind of a commitment to the success of the team overall, even if they're not involved in every part of it. You know, imagine a basketball team that has a shooter and a passer and a rebounder, but nobody knows who's who. Are they going to work like a team? Absolutely not. Everybody needs to know who the shooter is. Everybody needs to know who the rebounder is, and everybody needs to know who the passer is.
They'll be like the LA Lakers
here, even if they don't necessarily connecting on every play or every, you know, run down the court. Still, everybody knows what everybody's role is. And so from my point of view, you guys can all really do something that a lot of your competitors are not doing. And that is having everyone really participate as a member of the team and support the team's growth in the way that many teams don't, where they just see themselves as independent operators that just have a relationship with you and they don't really care about anything else on the team.
Go.
I have a question for everybody. So I feel like right now we're at a really good place on the team. Like everyone knows their roles. Everyone loves each other right now. And so, but I keep getting people sent to me, right, by some pretty impressive people, right? Rob Lehman just sent me his executive assistant who's looking to be an agent. Like that's like someone you don't ignore, right? But I don't really feel like I need another agent. And I think the business is being serviced well. Everybody's happy. No one's inundated. You know, like it's working. But then like you're at a point where you don't want to ignore talent, but you also don't want to hire if you can't handle it. And I'm just confused as to like, do I go with my gut? Like I don't need another person right now, so I'm not going to hire another person. Or do you just say, this is a great person and we should take the plunge anyway?
Well, you already know my thoughts on this. And look, this is a good transition in understanding culture and hiring, right? How people go together, right? So you have your core values identified, correct? So one of the things that's important for us to do is understand how our team members align with our values. Right? Because if we see what those words and values mean to them, then when we interview another person, understand what those words and values mean to the interviewee, you could start to preliminarily get an idea of how they would mesh together. Your idea of having them meet all your team members, and we talked about doing it like a little more informal, like over food, where it felt more of a conversation than just like, you know, four people like talking to somebody like it's like lined up like a firing squad. Feels a lot more conversational and the way that your team operates. But the other challenge is this. If you have people that don't want to see the team grow and don't want to see new people there and just want to keep everything the way that it is, what does that say about them? Something to think about. I think Stacy was looking for some feedback from the rest of the group.
I mean, Stacy,
Yeah,
so
I already heard your feet. No, I'm just kidding.
you have. Look, Stacy, I mean, we all have different goals, right? And so like you may have the right, if you don't anticipate that like more business might be like you might need that next year or something, and it's going to be different. And if it were to feel like that might be taking away from agents, you know, that otherwise like are already looking for more business from you or from their network, et cetera, then that's a consideration. I wouldn't like, personally, I would be very excited about this, but like, I wouldn't be too excited because, you know, like there are so many different personalities out there and not all of them are sales, right? Like somebody could be the best executive assistant in the world and that's where she shines. That doesn't mean that she can, you know, is like has a very good mentality of like closing the deal, right? Sometimes those super organized people are better at the back office than they are like in the trenches coaching a buyer to do what they have to do. So like it really depends, but like, you know, I would be kind of excited to have that conversation because I'm sure they're over the top at what they do. And I'd be curious to see, like, are they a fit for this role? But I also want to hire another agent. So,
Stacy, have you talked to her yet or no?
Yeah, I did. And actually, I thought she was phenomenal, but I did feel what Josh should have just like hit the nail on the head that I was not 100% sure she should be an agent.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I was looking for a director of ops, I feel like, oh my God, this woman would like run the show. Like it would be amazing.
Is this Callista?
No, her name is Muzgan.
Oh, I don't know her. Okay.
Plus she can't pronounce her name, but she was amazing, like beautiful and so smart and so put together and so buttoned up, but like not like a whole lot of personality. And the team did meet her and they did feel like, you think she could be an agent? Like everyone kind of had that sort of feeling. So my gut tells me she's not right for the agent role. And if I'm really not ready to buy an agent, to hire another agent, and then it's probably not the right move, is my gut. But you know, I keep getting people who seem like they could be great agents, but I just don't know if I want to collect people. You know,
well, I think you're going with your gut is probably the way to do it. But, you know, I know what I've struggled with in the past is setting that expectation when I meet with them for the first time up front, right? You might not necessarily have the transactions or the business there to bring on another agent, but that might not be your role for them as an agent. Are they looking to grow their own business? You know, are they coming in to just kind of stand there with their hand out and pull leads off of your name and you? So I've learned that, you know, setting that expectation up front has helped me. I mean, for the amount of transactions my team does, we probably have too many agents, but that expectation up front is, look, I'm going to provide you opportunities. But I'm going to show you how to build your own business. But if you're here to just, you know, piggyback off me, you're in the wrong, you know, you're in the wrong spot. So, or maybe you look at, maybe if you think she's impressive, maybe you could come up with like a kind of a hybrid position. I know at one point I kind of had a back end transaction type coordinator that was licensed, and after about 8 to 10 months she transitioned into an agent, and that was 7 years ago, and she quickly realized this agent stuff isn't good for me, but she was a badass on the operations side, and now she's my director of operations. So
I think that if you're going to bring somebody onto the team, you should be shouting from the rooftops about how pumped you are that they're joining your team. And if it's not clear as day, then you might be making a mistake. Like, there's nothing more valuable than your time, right? And like, you will invest time into this person And if you're not super clear, like that this feels like a great fit, you may spend that time, invest those resources. They may do a few deals, but it's also a good shot that a year, 2 years from now, they're moving on. And so like, I feel like people have to feel like a great fit. It has to feel like a home run. And I really agree with Tommy. Says sometimes you just got to trust your gut.
You know, Stacy and everyone, when somebody comes onto your team, there's a rationale for that person being there, right? The rationale is the goals you want to achieve, and this person can supply this piece of it. If you can't be clear about what that is and how that fits into your plan, you need to be very careful about bringing on talent. It's hard to say no when talent drops in your lap. That's true. But you know, what if your next client was a dean at a law school? And this client was so happy with you, they'd say, hey, Stacy, you know what? I could get you into my law school. Why don't you go to law school? Well, that's it. If you have a reason to go to law school, then yes, you say yes to that. But if you don't have a reason, you wouldn't take that deal, right? It's a great deal, but it's not necessarily in line with your objectives. And so if somebody drops in your lap who's a talented person, that's wonderful, especially if they happen to fit your intentions. But if they don't, you might be screwing yourself up to take them on. I can't tell you how many people I've coached over the years who went to law school or went to business school because they really didn't know what to do. And they ended up never really using their law school skills. They ended up maybe never using many of their business school skills, but they just did it because it sounded like a good thing. It sounded like a good opportunity, but they weren't clear in their own mind how this step gets me to here, which is where I want to go. And so if you can say to yourself, by hiring this person, this helps me get here, that's great. If you can't say that, it's similar to what Josh was saying. It has to be a home run. Otherwise, you may be getting yourself into a problem.
I was just going to jump in there and just say, you know, Stacy, I think that the hybrid, I'm actually talking to a guy right now, Chirag helped me find a recruiter to help find. And I'm terrible at like, just, I don't have the time to go find the people. But I do think that hybrid model is really interesting, like of somebody of like a listing manager, which I do think is like, for me, I'm pretty listing heavy, but like someone that could straddle that fence, you know, that is in sales and in operations at the same time. I mean, that could be a gem. So I would really think into that a little bit too, because they're hard to find someone that might want to be interested in sales at the same time. Because I think
I can't because I'm on this call.
If they have both of those abilities, that's really, really something interesting for you to utilize, you know, because I had a guy and we just let him go. But, you know, we were trying to put him into that role where he was like a salaried agent, but also helping us on the operations. He couldn't straddle that fence. But I think if you do have someone that could also help you with the back end of stuff or something like that, some of those hybrid roles that they are like a salaried person to the team, like the guy that I'm looking at right now, we found out that he's like, he was an agent for a little bit, but he was like, he doesn't have that drive. He doesn't have that like competitiveness. But he is very operational based as well. So he could be kind of a good role player. And we do need these kind of good role players on teams, you know, but that can score the basket sometimes, obviously some sales, but maybe they are more operational based. So, and if it comes from Rob Lehman, I'm sure that person can build a pretty mean Google sheet, you know, because the only guy I ever met that said for stress reliefs, he builds Google sheets. And I was like, you're a legend. So that's pretty awesome.
So I think, and we could not have more perfectly gone through an exercise of thinking through how to hire somebody. Right. And in many ways we all talk about that med-C, right? How do our past disappointments affect our future decisions? And Stacy has what she calls the insurrection, where a group of literally her entire team like ganged up on her. Like it was probably one of the meanest, cruelest things I've ever seen anyone do to like a kind, sweet, thoughtful person. But that will forever, like when she says, to give everyone some background, I know she's not going to mind us sharing this, is when she says I'm apprehensive to do anything, she never wants to go back to that place again, like at all ends, right? So look, let's go back to what we talked about in the beginning. What is the purpose, right? What are they there to do and accomplish? And how do you measure their success, right? So what we want to think about is how do we start projecting into our futures? How do we understand what is the capacity of our business? And how do we strategically put money away to invest, right? If you know your goal is to grow your business, and Margot, we want to hire somebody, right? then you can look at your transaction and say, okay, this person's going to cost $100,000. So let me take $5,000 off the next 10 deals, or maybe $2,500 off the next 20 deals, and put 6 months of this person's salary away, right? So I'm saving for it. I hire the person, I have a 6-month runway. Because a lot of agents aren't great, like, Haneen's not here, but they're not like her where they're like P&L, like, she's like a CPA tax planner all rolled into one. But most people don't think like that in real estate. We're salespeople, right? We're not accountants. We're not organizers. Like, that's not our core strength. So one is budgeting, right? How do you budget for these people? When they build, when Compass builds out their budget, they build out for hiring people, investments that they want to make, and everything else. Has anyone here budgeted for hiring more people throughout the year? I see these looks. Jillian and Megan are like, budgeting. Their manager, Chris Dolman's like, what the bleep, Chirag? Like, I've been trying to get them to hire people for like 5 years. Like, what the hell do you tell these people? I said, well, we have a tendency to make things simple and make sense, right? So the number one thing you need to do is start budgeting for when you need to hire people based on the projections of where you have. So if your business, let's just say, did 50 million, and you had a certain staff and everyone was busy, and now you want to grow it by 50% and go to 75 million, you're going to generally have to hire somebody else. Because if you think that your business is going to grow by 50% and you're going to give the same quality of service and have the same people, that's crazy. Fran, go find Robert Refkin so you can see all of us. So that's what I want you guys to
going now.
I know I'm getting FOMO seeing all these people on 95th Avenue, where it's where I worked every day. Generally, when I went to Compass, and I'd go up there, I'd make my coffee, I'd have breakfast, I'd see people, and it's nice to see that building have life again. So, look, in terms of hiring, right? This is the first of 4 conversations we're going to have. The recruiter that Josh and Matt used, she doesn't know this yet, but she'll come here and do a call with us, right? Kelly White is the executive, is in charge of executive recruiting at T360, which is Stefan Swanspoel's company. They're the ones that do the real estate trends, and she's the top real estate executive recruiter in the country. So she'll come here and do a session with us where she'll do some training and be open to Q&A. Kelly's a great person. I mastermind with her once a month, and she is a dear friend of mine that I've known many years. So she'd be happy to join us.
You also, Chirag, you should tell it, like, another important thing about Kelly's bio is that she was the director of operations for several brokerages. So she knows like a lot of the profile of each of these players that people might want to consider on their team and like what that looks like. And that's one of the high value things that I found about working with her to find a director of ops is like, she knew like, this person, they're a little too salesy, and like, oh, this is very much a director of ops mind. And understanding that profile, I found to be incredibly helpful.
She was also one of the first 10 employees that worked directly with Gary Keller, right? Who's done a lot for this industry. So, she's very bright. So here's some takeaway items, right? And then we're going to open this up just for some discussion. Number one, you have to look at who is on your team and figure out how to really clarify what the purpose of each person is. Remember those 3 things. What is the purpose? What do they really do and accomplish each day? And the third thing is how do you measure their success? And when you talk to them, they should say, my purpose on the team is this. This is what I'm supposed to do every day. And when I do this, I know I'm successful, right? Make sure that's all in alignment. The second thing is start looking into what your business is, where you want it to go, and start planning for an employee. Who is this person? What do they do? How do they fit in? When you have time to do this, you can write each day as things come to your mind. Oh, I'd like them to do this. I'd like them to do this. You know what? I met this kind of person. I would love to have someone like that. What do you really like about them? What are their personality traits? Like all of those different things, start building it out. Number 3 is budgeting. You need to budget for this stuff, right? You need to plan this into your annual plan so that you have an actual budget. And from there, you have money to spend when you find the right person. You should not be afraid to invest in yourself and your business. You all have a track record of growing your business every year, but yet you don't want to hire new people every year. And the last thing is be comfortable being uncomfortable. Hiring, managing, laying out salaries on a 1099 income is scary as all hell. It's uncomfortable. You're going to worry. But the funny thing is I know a lot of you, and you spend disposable income on stupider things than people. We'll all go out to dinner. We'll all go out to vacation. Some people buy bags. Some people buy shoes. Some people buy watches. Some people buy clothes, right? Everyone buys different stuff. And in the end, those discretionary numbers generally cost far more than you'd ever pay an employee. But you're not worried about that because there's nothing that says you have to spend this money every 2 weeks and pay somebody. So I encourage you all to expand your mind around this. We need to approach our business and growth with more strategy. People is the strategic leverage to scale. Watches are better than employees. What do you like, a big timer song? Like a rap video? We're gonna get some watches. So does anyone have any questions, any nuggets that anyone, any things anyone's done successful with hiring someone recently or in the past that they want to share with someone?
Hiring slow.
More higher, yeah.
Hiring slow. Like, you know, we've had some situations where we really needed somebody and lately, and in the past, like, we've kind of breezed through that process. And despite that, you know, this most recent time, we like definitely took our time, and are really grateful that we did, and still need, you know, that happening. But yeah, just not rushing the process, I think is huge.
I hired somebody. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Megan. No, go ahead.
I hired somebody recently for like this insane hybrid role because I just need someone with me at all times so that I don't hit people in my car while I'm texting and like and like so I'm not super freaked out when a showing runs late and I'm like, so my kids are sitting there at pickup again and no other kids are there. So I just have like an emergency person now that's with me all the time. And when I was interviewing, I'm like, to be super clear, I was like, some days you're going to pick up my kids at school and make them grilled cheeses. And then other days you're just going to drive me around and I'm going to text and not drive at the same time. Or you may go pick up keys or whatever. So when we did the interview, it was like the only time I had time was a Saturday. And the only time she was in town was a Saturday. And I was like, so you're going to come to my house and we're going to do the interview at my house where my kids are going to be. And you're going to see like the potential disaster that you're going to deal with, not every day, but some days. I'm like, you should see it if you think you're going to be able to do this job. She came to my house and literally got interviewed by me and my kids to a large degree. And I'm like, so like, I'm not hiding the ball here. Like, this is a little bit of a crazy job. So you should figure out whether you want it or not. And she was like, okay, I do. And now like when she goes and picks my kids up when a showing's running over, whatever, there's like no complaints, no nothing, no, this isn't my job. Cause I'm like, well, that is your job. That helps.
Clarity.
Yeah.
So one thing I shared in our breakout group, Matt, Allison, Jess was in there, and I don't think Andrea was there that day, but and I think it might help a little bit because I know for me personally, like I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and having 5 people on payroll and all of that just makes my mind explode. Like I want to focus on selling and growing my team. So there's a rule on my team: you must be licensed. I don't care if you're you know, not selling at all, you have to have your real estate license. What that allows me to do is pay any employee on my team through Compass and put it on Compass to handle it. So every employee on my team makes a percentage of the sales for the team. That way, because as Chirag talked about in the beginning, you know, this is a 12-month business, we can't look at it as quarterly when we're making a bunch of money, then we're not making money, then we're making money. This way, one, it motivates them to get to the finish line. 2, when the team's having a slow month or quarter, whatever it is, they're having a slow month. So I'm not writing that same check consistently. So that's been something big for me. That's really, really helped me, bring people on and, at first there's been some people are like, wait a minute, but, in the end, I set it up to where, hey, when we're rocking and rolling, you're going to be making a whole lot more money than if you were just collecting a monthly salary. So.
Great example of rules of engagement. One of the great things about real estate is there's so many different ways to play the game. And as we hear each other in a forum like this, or as you talk with other agents, you see very different ways of coming across things. But as a leader, it's up to you to decide what's right for your team. And if you're clear about that, then you find people who are aligned with that. And there are a lot of different ways to succeed.
Who pays W-2 versus 1099?
And something I just had to go through with my team director was I had to lower the percentage that he gets, because when we first started, like you, Tommy, I did a percentage base, but we weren't making as much money. But now, as the team is growing and we're making this much, we're making much more money, he's making crazy money. And it was creating like animosity. And what I learned that I did wrong was not make it like on a scale from when we started to say like, till you're making this much money, this is what we're going to do. And then when you start making this much money, this is what we're going to do. So I had to sort of backtrack, which is never a fun conversation, because it almost felt like I was taking it away from him, even though I wasn't. He got that amount of money before because our team wasn't producing like they are now.
The other thing to add on to hers, the way the structure was set up is, I remember doing this to you, Jess, right? We went through your numbers and her just being, excuse my profanity. You're like, what the fuck? He's making more money on the deals than I am that the other people do. And I'm like, who made this deal? This wasn't something that we created together. And look, it's very often that people do this. I know there's one other person on this call scratching their head right now about this. And look, a lot of us make these percentage deals in the beginning of hiring people because we don't want to pay the full load up front, right? We want someone to grow with us. But you want to make sure, even if you do that, because it is good to have them have skin in the game, that there is some sort of scale, and you need to model and forecast out these different scenarios, right? Like it's literally, you're doing a rev share deal, right? Is there an endless amount that they get rev share? Is there a cap on this? Like, these are all the things you have to think about.
Yeah, and if you're choosing to pay them that way as a default, only because you don't want to pay a full-time salary, chances are you're not speccing all this out. It's very easy to fall into that trap because it's kind of something that you just default to.
I also think that people get, not all people, but some people get like a little bit egotistical and get a little comfortable making all this money. And if it's not structured well, it almost opens up like a door that wouldn't have been opened, which is what I experienced with mine, because it was like my assistant would be like, I'm doing so much stuff to get the listing work together and blah, blah, blah. And then I would look at the numbers. I'd be like, well, what did you do to make money on this buy list that you did nothing for? And like, he wasn't able to see that it really is a collective amount of money. It's not just one deal, what you're making on it, and another deal, because collectively you're making all this money, which is why you can do a little bit more work when you're listing, because that's more paperwork, but you're doing a whole lot less when one of our team members bring in a big buy sale, because you're making money off of both of those, where so it was really backwards the way I did it. I still would do it exactly the same. Like, I would give my admin the same type of commission split, because I do think it's easier than the more money I make, the more he makes, and it's more incentivized. But I would cap it, like the max you can make per deal is like 5,000, because sometimes you're doing these big deals and he's making this crazy money. And I would cap it at probably like 5,000, or I would cap the percentages, or I would do like a growth scale to show that it can stop, depending on if we keep adding more team members, we're going to have to hire somebody else. So his has to come down.
Yeah, so I ran into that issue last year because we grew rapidly and our sales were just going through the roof the last few years. And some of the agents, because the way I'm set up is they pay the admin It doesn't come out of my pocket. It comes out of their deal. Now their split is great. So, it all averages out, but I didn't have a cap. It was just a straight percentage. And just like anyone's real estate business, as you grow, your price points grow. So we started to get into the higher price points, and that percentage, when you're multiplying that by a $2 or $3 million deal, it's like, whoa, I'm paying them this much, So I kind of backtracked, which, like you said earlier, Jess, isn't always fun to do, and we ended up putting a flat fee on every deal, because that they're still doing pretty much the same amount of work. So,
and I would just quickly add to that we had a similar situation with about 5 years ago with an assistant, that same, just the compensation piece of it, and she was paid as 1099, and that got us into a lot of trouble, because when she was let go, she tried to use that against us. So for any of those folks paying people by 1099, I would just encourage you to speak to an attorney about how that could potentially backfire.
I'm going to add to this. I have an employment attorney I work with, and if you've spent time with me, I'm all good on taking habitual risks. And, insurance is created for that one time something goes wrong, right? Like your car's not going to get hit every day, but when it does, you won't have insurance. If somebody dies, you have life insurance, right? God forbid you get really sick or terminally ill, you have health insurance, right? At the rate that you all make money in your businesses, it is very risky, not only to your business, but to your reputation, to pay real employees like this. Because the other part is when you come down to hiring people, right? We all know this as a, we need Jay-Z's employment agreements. It's probably 100%. And by the way, everyone, John Zimmerman's father passed away, so please reach out and give him some condolences and some love. We all we all realize it. Remember how much it sucks when you have to buy a house and get a mortgage because you have a 1099? People that are employees like structure. People that are bad employees like 1099s, right? So when you start thinking about this, make sure that you pay people the right way. Make sure you look at your state employment laws. Believe me, the anxiety and stress you'll have with an employment lawsuit and dealing with the state and doing this is not worth the money that you're going to save in payroll taxes. It's not. Right? I am a small business, just like all of you. Every single person here is on a salary.
It's really hard.
And it's not nearly as expensive to give people health insurance as you thought. Right? So look, in the end, as we're doing this, we want to make people feel that we're giving people not a job, but a career. And you also want to protect your liability in doing this. Tommy lives in a different state that has different types of rule. I call it the free world of Texas. But for the rest of us that live in different parts of the country, especially the tri-state area, it's very litigious towards the states frown very highly on people treating workers as employees and paying them as independent contractors. So be mindful of that. So look, we all have our marching orders. If anyone has anything else, I'm happy to stay on and discuss. If not, we're going to continue this conversation next week, and we're going to continue mapping out what this looks like. And next week, we're going to talk more, and David will lead this discussion on really interviewing people for culture, right? Like understanding how culture and hiring work, and how do we really put people together.
Chirag, I have one question.
Yeah.
Is there, any sort of, based on people's experiences, we spoke about the other day about paring down our team before we hire. Is that any rhyme or reason, or are we doing two things at the same time? Are you firing and hiring at the same time, or are you first cleaning house, then going for it?
Well, hiring is, as we said, I think you hopped on a couple minutes late. It's going to be a 3 or 4 month process, right? So you can start the process of hiring because you want to be super selective of who you hire. It's going to take time, right? And also just getting in, like, you know, like playing, you're a tennis guy, right? So the best practice you could have is playing like a couple warm-up matches, right? So talking to people, reviewing resumes, interviewing people. Remember, this is not our primary job skill. So after you do a couple interviews, you're like, oh, wow, I picked that up over there. Maybe I should have asked this next time. And then when you find the right person, you'll be a little more in rhythm.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But yes, get rid of those people right away. It's funny, your kids like listen to what you say all the time. And my daughter Valentina, if anyone does a bad job now, it's your first thing right away. Dad, you did a bad job on your work. You're fired. Jesus. Right. So and with some humor for everybody. So listen, Allison, Stacy can't make it, Tracy, Parsa, myself, Tommy, Fran, Jessica, Angela. Tommy's coming into town to work on a coaching project with us, and a group of us are going to get dinner in Westchester at 6:30 tomorrow. Please make an effort to come join, especially if you didn't come to Austin. It'd be a good opportunity to meet people. Not Austin, San Diego. Sorry. See, I'm thinking about Texas too.
Right.
Matt, make it happen, dude.
Do my best, buddy.
All right, guys. We'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
You guys.
Bye.
Take care.